Tonight, exclusive. Who was the real Michael Jackson? His protege, who lived at Neverland, reveals what she knows about Michael's kids, his relationship with other children, and the boy named Omar. Is he the pop star's secret son? Then, shark scare. Will you go in the water knowing this is out there? Meet the people who dared to take a dip and came face to face with a mouthful of daggers to share their death-defying stories next on Larry King Live. I'm Jim Moret from Inside Edition, sitting in tonight for Larry King. Our first guest is Nisha Kataria. She was a protege of Michael Jackson and lived at Neverland back in 2003. She's recorded a duet with Michael and is an artist in her own right, joining us tonight live from Atlanta. Nisha, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tell me about meeting Michael Jackson, how that came about.
Well, Michael Jackson's manager got a hold of my demo, and he listened to my track, I Will Always Love You, originally done by Whitney Houston. And one day they were sitting in Neverland, him and Michael, and he played Michael my I Will Always Love You song, and Michael said, wow, who is this girl? Can you call her? And so next thing you know, we drove to California to meet Michael, and I met him, and the very first time I met him, he had a big smile on his face, and he was very, very friendly and gave me a hug, and Prince and Paris and Grace, the nanny, were all in the room, and they all gave me a hug.
You were living in Phoenix at the time, right?
Yeah, we lived in Phoenix, and we drove over to California to meet him.
So did you go to Neverland to meet him?
Yes, we drove into Neverland, and I remember just seeing the big Neverland Ranch sign when you enter Neverland, and you feel him, but I hadn't seen him yet, and I was just so nervous, but he had the biggest smile on his face the moment he walked into the library in his house to meet me for the first time.
For those who haven't been there, those gates are kind of intimidating, and you drive through, and then it's still a long way until you actually get to the house.
Yeah.
What was it like? Describe that first meeting for us, if you could, and your impressions of Michael Jackson.
Well, like, he's the biggest star in the universe, the most recognizable man on this planet, and I was just super nervous to meet him, but he came in with a huge smile on his face, and Paris and Prince came in, and they introduced themselves to me, and they were about to shake my hand, and Michael said, no, we don't shake hands in this family, we give hugs. So they all gave me a hug, and then Michael sat down, and I sat down, and we just started having a nice conversation, and then he asked me if I could sing for him, and then I stood up, and I asked him, Michael, what would you like to hear? And he said, will you sing I Will Always Love You? And I sang him that a cappella, and the first thing he told me was, Nisha, you have the voice of an angel. So, I mean, it meant the world coming from him.
Nisha, you eventually moved in for a short time, didn't you, to Neverland?
I did. He decided that he wanted to record with me, so me and my mom kind of moved into one of the guest units and lived there.
And what was that like? What was it like to live at Neverland? It's been described as so many different things: part playground, fantasy land. There were statues all over. There was a zoo there. What was living there like?
Every morning when we would open our windows in our guest house, we would look at the lake, and there were 2 elephants that were being bathed in the lake. And there's music playing throughout the ranch, so you feel like you're in a movie. And there's actually a movie theater, and everything you could ever dream of is at the ranch. It was just one of the best experiences of my life living there.
How long did you live there?
A little over 2 months.
And you recorded with Michael Jackson?
Yes, we recorded a song and we recorded it in his private studio in the ranch.
Do you expect that that song will ever be released?
I really hope so. We're talking about maybe making a special tribute and putting it on my upcoming album.
Joe Jackson was on television the other night, dropped a bombshell in an interview with News One. He was responding to rumors that a young man, I believe you know him, Omar Bhatti, is Michael's son. Take a look at this.
Michael may have had another child. It's Omar is his name. And then everyone's like, oh, he was sitting right there next to Reby, and everyone's trying to connect some dots. Did you know that is Michael's other son?
Yes, I knew he had another son. Yes, I did.
And he looks like a Jackson.
Oh, yes. He looks like a Jackson. He acts like a Jackson. He can dance like a Jackson.
Nisha, you knew Omar. What's your reaction to that clip?
I mean, I saw him in the ranch. He lived there when I lived there. And I actually, the first time I actually really got to meet him was when the second time I sang for Michael. I sang Because You Loved Me with my CD, and Michael and his nephew Eli and Omar and Prince, they all came in and sat down, and Michael was like telling them, okay, listen, you have to hear her sing. And this was before I moved in, so I remember they were looking at each other and smiling as I was singing. And he was always smiling, a friendly boy.
I need to note for our audience, CNN has not been able to confirm Joe Jackson's assertion that Omar is, in fact, Michael Jackson's son. And according to news reports, Omar himself has denied any biological connection to Michael Jackson. Nisha, you mentioned Paris and Prince and Blanket. Paris, I believe, was about 6 or 5, and Prince a year older. Blanket just a baby. Mm-hmm. Did you see them interact at all with Michael Jackson as a dad?
I did. You would think that these kids, you know, they could have anything they ever wanted because Michael Jackson's their father. There was one time when me and my mom and Michael and Prince were all in the movie theater, and there's a concession stand with all the candy and popcorn and ice cream you could ever ask for. And one day we were all in the theater, and my mom offered Prince a candy bar, and Michael told her politely, he said, oh, he can't have any more today. He already had some. So you could tell that they were disciplined kids, and they were really close to their father, really polite, friendly kids.
The world first saw Paris at Michael's memorial, and many people were surprised. She was almost elegant and very sweet and spoke from the heart. How did you find all 3 kids?
They were adorable kids. There was one incident when Grace was driving us from the movie theater back to the main house, because it's kind of a little bit far, and I was sitting in the front passenger seat, and Paris and my mom were sitting in the back of the Lincoln Navigator, and Paris kept tapping on my shoulder and then hiding. And then I would look back at her, and she was smiling and all embarrassed, and then I would, you know, sit normal again, and she would tap me on the shoulder again. So she played like peekaboo games. She was just a cute, normal little kid. All of them were.
So many people had these misconceptions that Michael and his children had an odd relationship. Would you describe it as a typical father-child relationship with each of his kids?
Absolutely. They were happy kids.
If you haven't seen it yet, check out our blog for an inside account of what went on inside Michael Jackson's house before and after paramedics were called to the scene. It's at CNN.com. Larry King. More with Nisha and why Michael was drawn to her. Coming up next. Stay with us. Back with Nisha Kataria, protege of Michael Jackson's. And as we told you, her voice first attracted Michael Jackson. The song I Will Always Love You played a key role in her connection with Michael Jackson. Let's listen to a little of Nisha singing it. Wow. That's all I can say. Wow. I mean, you said Michael Jackson said that you had a voice of an angel, and it's just beautiful. What was it like recording with him?
Incredible. You know, this is the man behind Billie Jean and all those amazing songs. And being in the studio with him and actually seeing the master at work, actually seeing him walk around the studio and come up with all these ideas in his head right in front of you. And, you know, he would come up with a melody and say, okay, Nisha, sing this line. And then he would sing it, and then I would repeat it into the microphone, record it. And he just came up with all these things, and it was just amazing seeing him right there doing it right in front of me and actually giving me the song. It was just an incredible feeling.
Nisha, when was the last time you spoke to Michael Jackson?
I spoke to him in 2003 at the Radio Music Awards.
What brought your time at Neverland to an end?
This was right before the police raided the ranch for the trial that he had to go through.
And that trial, just to point out, he was acquitted on all charges.
Yes.
And it's actually because of that trial. I talked to his criminal lawyer. He never really wanted to go back to Neverland.
No,
Did you talk to him at all?
He never went back to Neverland. We were the last guests to live with him in Neverland, and he never went back there.
And what was your reaction to the way Michael Jackson's been treated and publicly portrayed? You spent time with him more than most people.
He's just the nicest human being that I have ever met in my life. And for one of the most successful people in the world, for him to open his heart and invite me and my family to move into Neverland, and, you know, for him to take a girl with a big voice who has a dream, he decided, you know, he wants to help me in my career, and he wants to be the man to put me out and to the world. And I just think that tells a lot about a person to open up their home to an unknown girl. He treated me like family.
I'm sorry. Do you feel in a way that you've lost a guardian angel?
I do. I mean, it still hasn't really sunk in yet that he's really gone, but he's definitely going to remain alive through his music.
And how did you find out that he had passed away?
I was actually in Phoenix, where I live, and my manager called me and told me to put it on CNN. And at that time, they were just saying that he had been hospitalized, so I never imagined that it would get any worse than that. And then I got in the car to drive somewhere, and then my manager told me, okay, you know, he passed away. So I pulled into a parking lot, and my manager was crying, and I was crying, and I've never heard him cry like that. So it was really, my manager was with him for 10 years, worked for him for 10 years, so they had a really close relationship as well, and it was just really sad and unbelievable.
He took you under his wing and you stayed at Neverland for a couple of months. What advice did he give you from one artist to another?
One of the best things that he told me was, this was actually a telephone conversation that we had when I was living in Neverland. He told me that, Nisha, you're going to do very well. And I said, thank you. And he said, if you take an average singer and you give them an incredible song, then they'll do well. But you take a wonderful singer such as yourself and give them an amazing song, they've got it made. So just coming from him, it meant so much.
Well, listening to that clip, you're clearly a wonderful singer, and thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much.